So in this presentation, we're going to talk about user-friendly interfaces, and more specifically, user-friendly interfaces in the author mode. Now, you already seen an example in Claudius' presentation of pretty friendly interface for authors using form controls and so on. But hopefully, I can still show you something interesting. Okay, so first thing that we're going to talk about are contextual toolbars. So why should you use contextual toolbars in the author mode? Well, first of all, each action will be offered in its intended context, so it is a lot easier for a user to discover the actions that it's supposed to perform in a certain context, and they're also much easier to access that way. We have here, for example, the contextual toolbar in a table, in a word processor. This is what I'm thinking, this is what I understand by contextual toolbar. And the second benefit would be that a problem with feature-rich application is that their toolbars can become really cluttered. So if you use contextual toolbar, then you will avoid this cluttering in your toolbars. So now I'm going to switch to oXygen and show you how you can add contextual toolbars in the author mode. So for this demonstration, I have chosen a dogbook article, and in this article, I can identify paragraphs. I have lists and also some tables. And on the toolbar here, I have a lot of actions. And for example, these styling actions, I normally only need these actions if I work in paragraphs. If I work in lists, then I need these list-related actions to insert new list items, to sort maybe the list and so on. And for the tables, I also have well, to the right. It's a pretty long toolbar. That just demonstrates my point, right? Some here on the right, there are some actions for the tables. So you add new rows and so on. Okay, so you can add contextual toolbar in oXygen by using inline action form controls. That's a feature that has been around for about a year now. And to get these, I'm going to switch the CSS that applies to this document, to this toolbar-oriented one. Okay, so let's see what changed. Now if I work in a paragraph, I have quick access to the styling actions. On the list, again, I have actions that are related to the list, like sorting or insert a new list item. In the table, I'm being presented with the table-related actions. So it's a little better, but it is not perfect. And the problem is that I've kind of moved the cluttering from the toolbar into the document. So at one point, if I'm working in a paragraph, then I only need the actions for this paragraph that I'm working in. I don't want them in all my paragraphs. And to correct that, again, I'm going to change the CSS. And let's see what changed. At first glance, the document looks just like before. But if I begin writing in a document, a toolbar will appear for this specific paragraph, right? And I can use these actions. When I'm hovering over a list, I'm being presented with the list actions of interest. And again, if I'm working in a table, I'm being presented with with a table related actions. Okay, let's take a look in the CSS and see how I added this kind of contextual toolbars. Okay, so first the paragraph. So to add form controls in author mode, you just use these predefined CSS functions, like I said. The oxy button adds an inline action form controls, bold, italic, underline, so it binds itself to a defined author action. And the trick here is that I use the focus CSS pseudo class. So this is a newly added support in oXygen version 15.2 for a couple of very useful CSS pseudo classes, and the focus is one of them. So when the focus is in an element inside a paragraph element, then I'm putting these buttons on the paragraph. And another interesting thing here is the subject selector. I believe this is in the CSS4 specification or something. Again, something we've added support for. So unless I use the subject selector, the element on which the CSS rule would apply would be the last one, right? But I'm using the subject selector and I'm saying this rule actually applies on the paragraph.
So it's like a predicate in XLT, let's say, right? You say it's a section para, but if one of the children is has focus or
something like that. And on the lists, I've used the hover pseudo class. So if I'm hovering a list item, then on this paragraph, I'm just I'm going to present some form controls. So that's how the hover over the list item works like. And for the tables, again, it's the focus pseudo class and the subject selector. So that when I'm inside the cell, I'm actually presenting the actions on the table. Okay, so that was the contextual toolbar part. The second, okay, so these are kind of little conclusions. First, about the inline actions, something new that we've added in oXygen 15.2 is the context preservation. So I don't know if that makes sense, but it's the fact that now you are able to select a word and then process it into something. Prior to version 15.2, you weren't able to do that. If you evoke an action in the context of you were forced to, so you could only invoke an action on the element it was added on, but now it can process selection.
So if you put an action on a section, the section was the current element passed to that action.
That was
like
the context,
current
right.
node.
So
now the current node, you can control whether this happens or not. Because if you add a plus on sections, you want this behavior. Because you want to add after that section, no matter where the character is in the document. User clicks on the plus after the section, you want to add after that section. And you want this behavior, right? But in some cases, as in this case, you do not want to steal the focus on the element that has the action, on the table in this
exactly.
case, or on the paragraph.
Yeah, the same thing goes for tables, right? Yeah, I'm working in a cell and I want these actions to be executed in the context of the cell, not on the table, even though they are added on the table. So that was a kind of a limitation we had. Now we don't. And the next thing is that you can activate the contextual toolbars by using the hover and focus pseudo class. Maybe you can think of some use cases for them too. And should probably done that earlier. And the second aspect of this presentation involves editing code blocks in XML. And in my dogbook document, I have such a code block, and there are I have identified two problems with editing code blocks in the author mode. First, there's no syntax highlight, so this is a CSS snapshot, and it would have been easier to read for me if I had a little syntax highlight for me to identify the selectors, the properties, and so on. And the second problem is that if the code blocks are really big like this one, they kind of occupy a lot of space in the document. So, of course, I could fold maybe the section, but then I won't see anything from the code block. Ideally, I would want to see a few lines so I could get an idea if this is the code block that I'm interested in or not. And a solution to this problem is to use a new type of form control that we've added in oXygen 15.2, and that is a text area form control. And you can use this text area form control to edit attribute values or element values. So I'm going to change the CSS again to the one that uses text area form control. So this is how a text area form control looks like. So like I said, you have syntax highlight, and I've also imposed a fixed size for this text area. I'm only seeing a part of the document. I can scroll and see more, or I can just drag and enlarge the text area just like in a browser. Okay. Let's take a look at the CSS to see how I added this text area. So again, I'm using an extension CSS function of the text area. It will edit the text content of the element. The content type attribute gives the type of content the text area is presenting. Basically, this can be any editor that oXygen offers support for any type of document. Right, and here.
So text/CSS, text/Java.
Yes, it's in the documentation, XML. Hopefully. And here I'm imposing the fixed width with rows and columns, and of course I could just delete them. And if I return to the document, sorry. Then the text area is it computes its own size so that it presents all the content. But then again, you can make it smaller if you want to, and the size will be persistent on this editing session. Okay, thank you. And if you have any questions. Yes.
Yeah, I actually this was very nice. The last example, and the program listing has been able to edit by using native editor for this kind of file. Does it work even if the file is included into the program listing? So it's like external file, which will not be edited in a separate window, but in place.
The X-included file is read-only. We present anything outside the current document as read-only.
Okay.
So you will not be able to edit that.
But still, it's very nice.
Yes.
What happens if you want to print on paper the author display?
Well, then you probably would create a CSS that lets the text area compute its own size, so you can see the whole content.
So that doesn't happen automatically?
Well, No, you can write in the CSS some rules for the print media, and it will go automatically. Yes. Yes. Okay.
Any other question? No. Yes.
Why it's difficult to create new syntax highlighting for new syntax?
Well, we do not have a pluggable mechanism,
But that's something to think about.
but the form control is, you know, the API to create your own form controls is open, so you can bring in your own form controls that presents that information in whatever way you want.
And if it helps, then we can give you the source code for this particular type of form control, and you can enhance it to have syntax highlight for another vocabulary.
Like you've seen in Claudio's presentation, he built a tree form control. You know.
Yes, that was a custom
different
form
custom
control.
form controls. That label with buttons.
With the senses,
With,
the tree with the senses.
Yeah, so
it was a form control.
So this form control does not allow you to plug in a syntax highlighter. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, George.